In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to identify different sampling methods and also to recognize why some samples might be biased. Some vocabulary words we're going to need for this lesson: population, sample, random sample, systematic sample, stratified sample, convenience sample, voluntary response sample, and bias sample. It's important to know the difference between these because you're going to be asked to identify why a sample is good or bad based on one of these methods. A fitness magazine printed a reader's survey. Statements 1, 2, and 3 are interpretations. Which do you think the magazine would use? Option 1, the average American exercises 3 times a week. Statement 2, the average reader of this magazine exercises 3 times a week. 3, the average reader who responded to the survey exercises 3 times a week. We've talked about this several times. Statistics can be used to sway what the opinion you're trying to get out there. And this question right here generalizes the results of their survey. The average American exercises 3 times a week. Well, they got their data from the people who responded from a survey, and that survey was in a magazine. So instead of being specific and saying the average reader of this magazine exercises 3 times in a week, also that person responded to the survey, they're going to be more general and go with statement 1. Okay, here are a couple definitions. Population. Population is the entire group being studied. Now, if we were talking about the population of the United States, we couldn't survey everybody in the United States, so we'd have to take a sample. So we might take a few people from each state. To get accurate information, it is important to use a good sampling method. In a random sample, each member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. A random sample is best, but other methods can be used. Random sample is kind of like when we did probability. Everything has an equal chance. Rolling a dice, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6 all have equal chance. When we do a random sample, everybody has to have equal chance of getting selected. Here are the different sampling methods and their definitions. Random means by chance, everyone has an equal chance. Systematic is according to a rule or a formula. So maybe every third person is being selected, and we might do that alphabetically. So if we took a list of people alphabetically, let's say we'll go back to America, every 10,000th person will be selected alphabetically. Stratified is at random, but we're also going to use some subgroups. So stratified is like layered. We're going to choose randomly from different subgroups. Convenience would be the easiest to reach. So an example of a convenience survey would be, a convenience sampling method would be, I'm going to survey everybody in this class because you're all here. That's easy. That's convenient. Voluntary response means we're going to send it out, and whoever wants to reply back, they can do that. So voluntary response, maybe we send it out in a newspaper, or we give the option to give feedback over the radio. Somebody's got to call in. They choose to be in the sample. Example 1, identify the sampling method used. In a county survey, Democratic Party members whose names begin with the letter D are chosen. Systematic. The rule is to survey members whose names begin with D. So we're following a system. So what's the sampling method used in this case? A telephone company randomly chooses customers to survey about its service. This one is random. I might also accept convenience in this case because not everybody is in the telephone book. So it'd be hard to survey somebody who doesn't have a a landline with a telephone company, or is not in the phone book. Identify the sampling method used. A high school randomly chooses 3 classes from each grade and then draws 3 random names from each class to poll about lunch menus. Now it says random in here a lot, so you might think it's random, but remember, stratified is a random survey that is broken down into subgroups. The 3 classes are the subgroups, names chosen randomly from within the subgroup of classes. In a county survey, families with 3 or more children are chosen. The rule is to survey families with 3 or more children. This is systematic. A retail home improvement store randomly selects customers to take a survey about their shopping experience. Now this says random, but I might say this one is convenience. It's going to be hard to select people randomly if they're not in your store, so that's going to be convenient. You might randomly choose people, but it's convenience because you're choosing people who are at your store. At a basketball game, 5 sections are chosen at random, and 20 people from each section are randomly polled. This one is stratified because we are, stratified because we are using 5 sections as random subgroups, 20 people randomly chosen from within the sections. This is also convenience because the people are conveniently there to be surveyed. Now we're going to talk about survey and possible reasons a survey might be biased. A biased sample does not accurately represent the population. The data collected from biased samples is not reliable. This is a way that statistics can be used to sway an opinion or say something that is something's true, but based on the biased survey, it's not as true as they make it sound. An example of this is the data used on shark attacks, where I said that shark attacks have increased 1,000% from 2000 to 2010. Well, I only used 2 numbers, and they went from 1 to 10. That's 1,000%. That's a biased statistic, and we could do the same thing with sampling methods. Identify the population and the sample. Give a reason why the sample could be biased. A record store manager asks customers who make a purchase how many hours of music they listen to each day. Well, the population is record store customers. He's only going to survey customers, so he's not going to survey people outside the store. So that's the population. The sample is going to be customers who make a purchase. So some people might come into the store, but if they don't buy anything, they're not going to be sampled. And the possible bias is if you're going to buy something, you probably don't mind the store. And maybe you like the type of music they're selling there. Or if it's a record store, maybe you're a fan of records versus CDs or using your iPod or something. Identify the population and the sample. Give a reason why the sample could be biased. An 8th grade student council member polls classmates about a new school mascot. All right, so we got an 8th grader polling classmates about a new school mascot. The population is students in the school. The sample is his classmates, and the possible bias, the sample is her classmates, and the possible bias is she polls more 8th graders than students in other grades because she's sampling her classmates. So the mascot's for the whole school, so that's why it's the student population, but she's only sampling classmates That means they could have a biased opinion of what the mascot should be. Identify the population in the sample. Give a reason why the sample could be biased. A radio DJ asks listeners for feedback about the type of music played on a radio show. Well, the population is going to be radio listeners, specifically people who listen to that radio show. The sample is the people who hear the question and who call in. Well, the feedback is biased because you're only going to get feedback from people who call in. So whether they're calling in to try and win something or whether they have a really strong opinion on the topic, it's going to be biased because otherwise they wouldn't call in if they didn't care about it.